How's it going, bros? My name is Rui, and today we are going to play some Pokemon. How's it going, bros? My name is Rui, and today Pokemon. How's it going, bros? My name is Rui, and today I'm still here all dumb. I don't even know what I'm looking at anymore. I'm just like looking at myself, looking at myself. I don't even know what I'm looking at anymore. I'm just like looking at myself, looking at myself. I don't even know what I'm looking at anymore. Oh no! Oh Lord, man. Well, that's cute.
I gotta probably go like sit opposite for hold on.
We should go right. They go right here.
It's the early hours of the morning on October 3rd, 2016. In a quiet precinct. It's the early hours of the morning on October 3rd, 2016. In a quiet Parisian suburb, Police Chief Christian Salt is fast asleep next to his wife. Since he investigated the Paris massacre the year before, he's had trouble getting a full night's sleep. But on this night, he's blissfully swaddled in soft sheets, having sweet, sweet dreams. Not for long. At approximately 3 a.m., he's awoken from his slumber to the sound of his phone ringing. The noise stirs his wife out of sleep too, her mind immediately finding the words, "not again." The person on the other end of the line is the night officer calling from HQ. There's been a volement armé, an armed robbery. It's happened at a very swanky place too, a rarefied joint where Hollywood movie stars rub shoulders with oil barons. What he doesn't know at that very moment is he's being informed about a robbery of one of the world's biggest TV reality stars, a woman whose backside has had more TV time than global warming. Salt has no idea this case will become known in France as l'affaire Kardashian, a cause célèbre that'll turn out to sound like something from a crime novel. Nonetheless, when he hears her name, he doesn't even know who she is. Rubbing his eyes with one leg in his pants and a cup of coffee steaming next to his laptop, he types into a Google search box the words Kim Kardashian. After a bit of reading, he thinks, wow, this woman has a lot of likes on Facebook. He's soon surrounded by followers to the extent that at times he feels like he's the last prop in the middle of a swarm of locusts. Sure, he's been in the spotlight before. He investigated that terrible massacre. He's worked on a number of very high-profile crimes, but nothing he's done can prepare him for a Kardashian. For him, of course, it's work. It's what he does. But for the rest of the world, it's entertainment. It's arguably the most real thing that's ever happened to the reality star. So what's ironic is many of her fans don't believe it happened. For the conspiracy theorists that hide in every corner of the internet, it's a staged event, something we'll come back to soon. Okay, so let's go back to the start. Maybe some of you have no idea what we're talking about. Perhaps even a few of you have remained sane enough to not get caught up in the world of Kim Kardashian and her famous family. We're not going to do some kind of bio here, so all you need to know is that Kim Kardashian is an incredibly wealthy American TV reality star who cut her teeth doing things in front of people who liked how she looked. Yeah, she got famous by being famous, for being a socialite, for being rich, for showing off her allegedly enhanced body parts, and finally, for marrying a rap star turned man that once wanted to be president, Kanye West. That relationship took a turn for the worse, and not long before we started writing the show, Kardashian had filed for divorce. Both her and West have been in Time's 100 most influential people. She was there before the robbery when she was already making buckets of money from influencing people. Her net worth as of June 2020 was said to be $900 million. When she was with West, as she was at the time of the heist, the two of them had an astronomical amount of cash. With that in mind, Kardashian wasn't and isn't averse to shelling out a few dollars on jewelry. Okay, so she went to France for Paris Fashion Week. We expect a bit of a holiday. She did once say holidays are the best, although perhaps her 2016 jaunt to Paris wasn't the best time of her life. In fact, her ordeal sounds terrifying. She was staying at a luxury residence on Paris's Rue Tronchet. Apparently, the hotel/apartment doesn't stand out. That's why it's sometimes called no address hotel. You can stay there if your name is on the guest list, if you know what we mean. You either have to be very wealthy or very famous. She liked the $16,000 plus a night suite a lot, and had stayed there before with Mr. West. At the time of her heist, he wasn't there. He was doing a gig at an arts festival in New York. Quite suddenly, he just stopped playing and told the many fans, "I'm sorry, family emergency, I have to stop the show." Not long before that, at around 2:30 a.m. in Paris, 5 guys had entered the no-address hotel. They shouldn't have been allowed into the place, but because they were all Google search box the words Kim Kardashian. After a bit of reading, he thinks, wow, this woman has a lot of likes on Facebook. He's soon surrounded by the paparazzi, to the extent that at times he feels like he's the last crop in the middle of a swarm of locusts. Sure, he's been in the spotlight before. He investigated that terrible massacre. He's worked on a number of very high-profile crimes, but nothing he's done can prepare him for a Kardashian. For him, of course, it's work. It's what he does. But for the rest of the world, it's entertainment. It's arguably the most real thing that's ever happened to the reality star. So what's ironic is many of her fans don't believe it happened. For the conspiracy theorists that hide in every corner of the internet, it's a staged event, something we'll come back to soon. Okay, so let's go back to the start. Maybe some of you have no idea what we're talking about. Perhaps even a few of you have remained sane enough to not get caught up in the world of Kim Kardashian and her famous family. We're not going to do some kind of bio here, so all you need to know is that Kim Kardashian is an incredibly wealthy American TV reality star who cut her teeth doing things in front of people who liked how she looked. She got famous by being famous, for being a socialite, for being rich, for showing off her allegedly prime parts, and finally, for marrying a rap star turned man that once wanted to be president of the West. That relationship took a turn for the worse, and not long before we started writing the show, Kardashian had filed for divorce. Both her and West have been in Time's 100 most influential people. She was there before the robbery when she was already making buckets of money from influencing people. Her net worth as of June 2020 was said to be $900 million. When she was with West, as she was at the time of the heist, the two of them had an astronomical amount of cash. With that in mind, Kardashian wasn't and isn't averse to showing out a few dollars on jewelry. Okay, so she went to France for Paris Fashion Week. She expected a bit of a holiday. She did once say holidays are the best, although perhaps her 2016 jaunt to Paris wasn't the best time of her life. The passport deal sounds terrifying. She was staying at a luxury residence on Paris's Rue Tronchet. Apparently, the hotel/apartment doesn't stand out. That's why it's sometimes called no address hotel. You can stay there if your name is on the guest list, if you know what we mean. You either have to be very wealthy or very famous. She liked the $16,000 plus a night suite a lot, and had stayed there before with Mr. West. At the time of her heist, he wasn't there. He was doing a gig at an arts festival in New York. Quite suddenly, he just stopped playing and told the many fans, "I'm sorry, family emergency, I have to stop the show." Not long before that, at around 2:30 a.m. in Paris, 5 guys had entered the no-address hotel. They shouldn't have been allowed into the place, but because they were all wearing police uniforms, the concierge opened the door. That was a mistake. The gang handcuffed him at gunpoint and demanded they take him to Kardashian's room. She was sleeping at the time, naked except for a bathrobe, when she thought she heard footsteps outside her door. She shouted, "Who's there?" to which there was no answer. It was then 2:56 a.m. that she called the boss. The next thing she knew, 2 men appeared in front of her, and with them was a tied-up concierge. Both men were hooded, although only one of them had a ski mask. Both guys were dressed mostly in black, and both of them had police written on their tops. Frightened out of their wits, she watched in horror as the guy with the ski mask approached her. In English, but in a foreign accent, he demanded she hand over her diamond engagement ring. That ring was reportedly worth $4 million. You can understand why she might not have wanted to give it up, and at first she told the man she didn't know where it was. Her memory soon improved when the guy held a gun to her head. He then started looking around for the rest of the stash. Here, we'll interrupt the story and tell you something about France's so-called home stash. You see, robbing banks these days isn't all that easy. It's just so much security. In France, like in other countries, the only way to steal a ton of cash is by robbing the rich in their homes. Celebrities are sometimes the targets, especially ones whose lives you can follow online. You know what they own, sometimes where they're staying, and often what valuables they like to travel with. The day before she was robbed, Kardashian had posted a selfie on Instagram wearing an incredibly large and expensive diamond ring. She also posed with diamonds decorating her mouth. The crafty gang in France have been staking out Kardashian on social media. According to the French cops, these gangs are responsible for wasting prey for people that they've been watching online. In one case in France, a gang tied up the members of a rich family and put each member in a separate room. The gang then threatened each family member and asked where the valuables were kept. One of them is always bound to tell, especially when someone could get seriously hurt. Usually the gangs don't want to resort to violence, but they will if necessary. With this particular family, they followed them on the socialite pages of Vogue magazine. After the robbery, the gang even had the audacity to call the father of the family and ask for the appraisal documents for the stolen jewels. Apparently, the gang was finding it hard to sell them without these documents. This was a case of, tell us what we want to know or we'll find you and hurt you. Okay, so you get the picture. You know what kind of people we're talking about here. Now back to Kim in a bathrobe with a gun pointed at her head. The ski mask guy said in no uncertain terms, tell me where the jewels are. He took her out to the landing where she thought about making a run for it and then realized she'd probably get shocked when the elevator door didn't open in time. He took her to the bedroom where he pushed her forcefully onto the bed and tied her hands with plastic cables and tape. When she screamed, he covered her mouth with that same tape. The guy then picked her up, took her to the bathroom, and dumped her in the bathtub. It wasn't hard to find what they were looking for. The bounty included what was in a jewelry box, what was lying around, and what was in her purse. According to Kardashian's statement to the police, the haul included 2 Cartier diamond bracelets, a Jacob necklace gold inlaid with diamonds, earrings with diamonds by Lorraine Schwartz, and others by Amina. 3 gold necklaces by Jacob, little bracelets, jewels, rings, a necklace by Lorraine Schwartz with diamonds, another little necklace with 6 diamonds underneath, another diamond necklace with the name of my son, Saint, on it, a Jacob diamond cross, 2 rings in yellow gold. Yeah, she obviously didn't travel light. We're surprised she didn't add to that statement the kitchen sink, the diamond-studded kitchen sink. All in all, around $10 million worth of jewelry was taken from her. They also took her smartphones and some cash. In the tub, she didn't really know what was going on. She did fear for her life, though, thinking the guys might come back in. When she was sure they were gone, she started to rip the tape off. That, she said, wasn't hard at all. She guessed the guys weren't too experienced at home invasions. She even said they argued like kids the whole time they were doing the robbery. According to reports, the gang's getaway vehicles were bicycles. We guess they didn't think they'd be involved in a high-speed chase through Paris. It was actually quite clever because bicycles are easy to get rid of and hard to trace, and the gang knew CCTV was watching them. They're not very good carriers of bags, though. During the escape, one guy dropped the diamond and platinum cross on the sidewalk. 3 days later, some people's worlds were turned upside down when they heard that the next installment of Keeping Up with the Kardashians was going to be placed on hold indefinitely. Fans were already feeling the first shivers of cold turkey when the robbery became a sensation in the media. But get this, some people thought there hadn't been a robbery at all. Some folks thought she was behind it all. You see, some things just didn't add up for some people. They asked the question of why she was carrying so much jewelry with her. Okay, so a diamond ring and maybe a necklace or 2 is reasonable, but why was she in France with a veritable pirate's treasure chest? Well, she was at the time incredibly wealthy and not one to shy away from the cameras. Perhaps she always carried that many valuables with her. After all, listen to what a member of the Saudi royal family said after being asked about the heist. There's no question in my mind that this will play heavily on the mind of shoppers and travelers from the Gulf when it comes to visiting Paris. Lots wear their jewelry very openly here. Maybe her traveling treasure wasn't all that strange. Then others asked, why was she not bruised after her ordeal, especially around her wrists? And if her smartphone had been stolen, why was she using one in a photo after she'd spoken to the police? They knew this because they'd seen the video clip. Some people wondered if she had not staged the entire thing to make a giant insurance claim. That kind of talk on the internet didn't sit well with her. She said that not only had she been the victim of a violent robbery, but she was now being victimized back home in the U.S. Let's remember, this is a woman who at gunpoint had screamed the words, "Don't kill me, I have babies. Don't kill me, please. I have babies. I'm a mom." She soon filed lawsuits against several media outlets and put a gag order on that video. She later dropped the lawsuits, which inspired conspiracy theorists once again to air their knee-jerk reactions online. Okay, they said, maybe she didn't do it for the insurance money, but maybe she just wanted even more publicity than she already has. Really? She'd risk becoming a criminal in France to get more attention when she arguably has more attention than the sun? The whole thing being staged just didn't add up. Then some suspects were apprehended by the police along with the alleged ringleader, one Almar Al-Qadashi, aka Omar the Elder. This 60-something man was made out to be some kind of criminal mastermind, although his lawyer said he's very far from the fantasized image of a great bandit that he portrayed. Another guy was arrested after his DNA was found at the site. He later admitted that he'd been part of the robbery and had even tried to sell her ring. He added that this proved difficult given the ring was so well known. It ain't easy to fence the crown jewels, that's for sure, but it can be done. 11 suspects were apprehended in total, most of them aged 44 to 72. The 5 men that entered the building that day have since been dubbed the Grandpa Robbers because they were aged 60 to 72. As we write this, the trial has yet to take place, although one man, named Eunice Abbas, isn't denying anything. He's since written a book called I Kidnapped Kim Kardashian. This 67-year-old guy is the guy that dropped the diamond-encrusted cross on the sidewalk when he was making his slow getaway on a bicycle. He later wrote, "It went fast, maybe 5, 6, 7 minutes, from entry to exit, because everything went smoothly. Nobody interfered, the victim was existence. He's hoping he'll be given a light sentence given his honesty and the fact that he didn't harm him. As for the missing jewelry, well, the Kardashian bling is still out there somewhere. It's very likely everything was taken apart and those parts were sold separately. It could well be sitting in jewelry stores in Antwerp as we speak, one day becoming part of some other rich person's jewelry collection. What experts said about the stolen diamonds, they will be on the fingers of Americans in 6 months to a year, and they won't even know they once made $8 million on Instagram for any identity." That concierge, he was feel after what had happened. So much so that he wrote a letter to Kardashian. It went, "Dear Kim, when you feel the cold steel of the it's the moment when remaining calm can mean the difference between life and death, both our lives." She didn't reply. Now you need to know in the same way bank robbers executed perfect bank heist, stole $20 million. Or have a look at airplane heist, thief who hijacked a plane and stole $1 million.
To the Steelers.
Frankincense and myrrh are perhaps best known for their biblical connotations, but this tree sap has been prized across the world for over 6,000 years. These fragrant incense pieces come from the Burseraceae family of trees and are found across the Horn of Africa.
Your turn.
It's over! So prepare for defeat! Meet the most feared creature in Duel Monsters! The mighty Exodia Necros!
Welcome back to the Yu-Gi-Oh! Segment where we challenge Calvin to build a deck around a difficult monster. In today's episode, he has to summon the infamous Exodia Necros, used by Gozaburo Kaiba in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, and win the duel. Summoning it needs picking an established win condition.
Impossible! Die in the end.
Okay, guys, here we go. I am so amped up for this. This is Squid Game. So many of you guys have been telling me that I need to see it. And not just you guys here, you know, our community here, but people I know, a couple of good friends of mine have said how good it is. I just the little bit I know about it, it does sound certainly like something
Shit, man. I'm thinking we use, man.
and not just you guys here, you know, our community here, but people I know, a couple of good friends of mine have said how good it is. I just the little bit I know about it, it does sound certainly like something that is just firmly in my wheelhouse. So we're gonna try and do this together. There's plenty of reactions to it throughout YouTube. You know, I've seen proven many times in the past, just because other people can do stuff doesn't mean I can. But we're gonna give it a go. We'll edit it up, hopefully, you know, in a manner that's acceptable to Susan and company, and see what happens. But I am dying to see this. Let's do it. I like the okay. I like the beat. Enjoying the beat. Okay, so we're gonna. Oh, I was gonna say we're gonna learn why it's called Squid Game right away because it's really looks like a squid, and it's very thin rhymes. Offense and defense. There's more rules in this than there is in the NFL. You die, well that sucks. Or is it you die because your mom kills you for getting your shirt ripped? Oh look. Look. Out face on him. Who's the guy he owns? I don't like chicken. So let's just spin what we have. Yeah, good strategy, bro. Mommy's got to give you more. What a whiny little bitch. Let me see your back hurts. Jesus Christ, dude. Yeah, that's it. I wondered. Yeah, mom. she changed the pin. Ah, fuck you. Number 9 was a surefire middle of the packer. Yeah. Oh, he's gonna win. That 6 is closing like hell. Watch a lot of hard faces. Yeah. He wins. Shit. Oh, 6 and 8? Oh, he bet an exacta? Ah, so he's really gonna cash. That's kind of an ominous look at him, wasn't it? Raggedy. Oh, come on, dude. Oh. Oh. That's not sweet. That's nasty, dick. Oh, so he's getting those weeds. Oh, boy. Oh, this is gonna suck. We're gonna do some nose slicing. Have some blood soup. This is really fucked up.
I don't watch stuff like that, man. Fuck that. Forgot I was live streaming. I haven't even played the game. Nah.
One team landing at that spot.
One team that's on the bins.
At the
broken bins.
What is that? Just waiting for the news? I'm going good.
106, white past.
I come with you.
I'm scanning one, I'm coming. Up the middle a bit.
Getting hurt?
Scanning. Attack the parking. Look on my side. Attack the bar. One's on the rock. Nice.
Where are my kills, man? Fuck!
I'm scanning.
How would I Phoenix? Someone's on me! Someone's on me! Look at me!
Yeah,
Yeah. I'm with you now. I'm scanning him. He's like in front of me. That's just fucking gooey shit. He's 55 blue. How do you Get hit for 55.
Take the height. I can't really. I am. Can't really
I'm
creep
good,
over
Eddie.
here.
My hit. They're bumpers.
Already. Wait for it.
I got shit on the bumper back.
Dude.
I'm scanning thing.
They're below me.
Yeah, fire the DB down.
Power back.
I'm scanning. Rip them. So, the sand is down.
I think there's something here. Yeah.
I'm scanning.
That's the tree.
Okay.
Shoot the guy. 106.
Yeah, shoot him. Bring this stuff quick. Nice.
Alright, fuck up my grapple.
And as well as it says 2. It's so free. The portal there. That's why she was.
Zipline. Easy fight.
Battery.
I have 2 beds.
Wait.
Yeah, no.
Nothing.
No, that's just what? I've never bad.
That guy's nice.
Shit on the
Oh
wall.
my god.
I shit on the wall, so. Go, I'm healing. I'm still healing. I'm going, bro.
Getting a left hand line. Another rock to the right.
Shit on the wall, so. Oh my god, I'm shitting.
Oh my god, Tashin!
Almost
Nothing.
No, that's just their third, no?
I need so
I know 2. Okay.
Nice.
I got you, know. How am I not getting KP? Fucking game. Shit on, holy shit.
Heart's like dying
Can
right
I bring the armor too?
now. Sheesh.
Alright, thanks for running.
I don't see shit. Nothing.
You're fucking paranoid. Oh, no.
It's a global. And I
Actually,
think
my
that's
life.
what this guy's after.
I'm gonna give 120.
That fucking bitch. Riding. Block. 41.
But I'm cracked hard.
Thanks for fucking riding me, pussies.
Fuck, pussies. Good. Shit.
Actually, shit on. Get the fuck out of here, man. Yeah, I go. Another team. Holy fuck, let me live my life for a second.
I'm getting triple tank.
Shit on. Oh my god, I'm fucking.
Can you get the fuck out? Oh, get up.
They have no shit. Oh, fuck.
I'm seeing you. No, I can't do shit.
Fucking chicken.
My god, guys, it's still fighting. Good.
Alright, motherfucker.
Go. We got a bunch on the zone. I'm getting you.
This is the zone where you fucking bolted with ash into the zone.
Alexa, tell Xbox to record what happened.
Where are we trying to go? Take one of these. I think they're both open.
They're both taking the big
Lay them high. Lay them high.
There's a team going. Ow, look at it.
I know, because you're not listening. I was just not listening. Guy.
I'm going to go inside.
I can't get one back. One is on the roof, huh? We might do something on the hill.
Yeah, I'm going down. I'll watch over you when I get there. I want you.
fighting, boys. Keep
Around
fighting.
670.
Keep fighting. Shino, you good?
I'm fine, I'm chilling.
Bro, you
Listen.
said, you said high ground. I was like, I was.
Yeah, I put the other high ground.
I said the build, like the egg. I think I did that.
I thought you meant the high ground like above that. Because you said
No, I meant like, I think I meant like the way on top of the roof. Yeah, I also doing this thing. But then there was a team also going there already. Just watch this house. We're fine. We're just all our attacks.
I need flash.
I cracked that guy. I cracked him. That guy just got shot. I want that care package.
No way. Nibbles.
We gotta clear this out. If he's showing you again, he's taking these kids.
I'm coming. Okay. Alright.
Almost. What are you guys thinking?
Red arm on the way from the right.
One on the right.
Bullet.
More friends. Don't let the raid get in. The raid is probably going opposite direction. There's a raid, right?
Yeah, there was a raid. Okay. She's ran right, maybe. She's ill.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm getting angry. Can you flash? 140.
I saw you. I saw you just here.
Oh, it's kind of nice.
It's below, Jen. I'm on the stairs. I hit him.
Where? I don't see him. He's running up this way.
Cracked him. He's down bad, dude. Mono is surprised.
64, dead ball.
We have a corner we can play on. Two teams.
I need slide power.
Look, you guys to me. One of the rooms or not? No. Just stay here. I think we should just stay. You stay and pinch these guys up here. Oh my god, hitting him. I see him.
I'm gonna scan.
Rendering.
Where is shit floor?
They're bubbled already. 3 kills. Sweat.
Yeah, they're holding here. That's like impossible. Yeah, they can go fuck up. I can't push that.
That was one.
P7, I'm taking it.
Where are you jumping?
I dropped the R9.
I'm taking it.
Barely.
Yeah.
I'm dropping it.
Double headshot one here. Bro, what in the fuck?
What?
Your gun was literally like inside the package. GP1. Oh my god, we're getting 5 too.
We can play. Let me see what we can do. Oh, I don't know. Anything level? there's animals, there's rocks on the left here.
Keep watching that scene on the right, Shane. Don't let them...
I'm watching.
Those guys are fucked.
Okay, I'm doing it.
Keep watching them.
I just need heavy, man. I don't have heavy.
I don't have any other.
They're taking 90 on one.
Yeah, I know me from you guys. Who did?
Where I found? Look at these guys. No risk, triangle.
I'm double RPG, so I can't really do that.
I'll do the whole game. I don't know if you guys
Is that them up there?
It's so fucked.
Yeah, there's a tank! Give me flash.
We should walk up as soon as possible now. They're gonna wipe us on the team. Go up, go up.
Yeah. The left.
What is this fucking audio?
That's cracked. On the house.
They're pushing.
I have ulti, what do I say? One place. I'm in the building.
I'm doing the city.
Wait, what? Keep my one. What?
Someone?
Nice, you got him.
He's almost cracked.
Nice. My G7 hit by, did I nerf it? Didn't he shit?
I don't know.
You did so good, but
What
so
the fuck? I was aiming on him and no bullet hit. G7 fucking ass. What the fuck? On him, bro, like six bullets.
I wish that controller crawler is so hard, but I fucking do it.
Bro, I played Wingman Outer Type only. That was insane, bro.
Target. Oh, 88. How's the happy
Congress.
Fred Gang.
There's a lot of blood of stuff.
I'm not even in my building.
I don't have a gun.
No gun in the building. No, I'm playing safe for now. I'm getting AIDS for now. Yeah, I died. I died. That was weird.
Super late. I didn't even see the character there. Straight to the
Good shot from the path. Good shot from the path there. Help me out.
Yeah, I was still losing. I knew you guys had that of it.
Yeah, I'm not cracking that right now, but I grappled my aim assist had me like locked down where I was trying to go all the way to the building, but I should shoot more shit more often. This is way more fun than just sitting here with my lips, you know what I mean? All these pills are unopened in the front. Oh, never mind. Oh, they're right here. Pardon me. Ash 115. On the block. I know that. Hands on. Not the portal. My take it. And south. Over there, my rough. My name. Out there, port. I'm with you.
I crashed right here. Where you at?
Holding. Hey. What? Bruh. Huh?
fuck they go?
Do they just keep running? I didn't even hear anything if I got in. Look at me, bro. No way. I don't know how they got that far. I ain't pushed it up. Not that guy. I'm doing it. Right there.
They just got a purple armor top out of that. Are you fucking serious?
Look at this fish, bro.
Taking this.
He's doing it to me. My team, oh, he ran to another team. Means they're on me. Oh, they are, dude. I gotta go. Oh, I hit the portal accident. Oh, I'm down to the right now.
Friends.
We go, we good. Oh,
Those are missing. Give me the fucking one extra. The sign says not it.
not too bad, not too bad. You good, bro? You guys with me? I'm fighting? Yeah, well, I want to say something, maybe it's all right. It's a big boy. Only two. Wait, what? That's not a team, that's not a team. Come on, big video. Take it. Alright. Oh, good.
Ah!
There's 20 as fuck.
Turn it off.
My thumbstick sticky.
Everything blue? Maybe not. Every second blue. I need it.
Congratulations, soldier. You've just been picked to be part of a 4-man crew on an American Abrams main battle tank. That's right, you'll officially be on board one of the most powerful machines on Earth. A tank so tough that none have ever, in its entire lifetime, been destroyed by enemy fire. You may be a total badass on the battlefield, but buckle up, Buttercup, because you're about to find out why life inside a tank sucks. Like tight spaces? We sure hope you do. Because the first thing you're going to notice about life inside a tank is that there's not much room to move around. The total area for crew inside a tank is only a few square feet, and that's because as you begin your new life as a tanker, you very quickly realize that the machine comes well before the humans. After all, a modern battle tank can easily level an entire neighborhood block, while you probably struggle to fight your way out of a wet paper bag. So hopefully you're not claustrophobic, because not only is the interior of a tank an extremely tight squeeze, but it gets even worse when the tank is fully buttoned down. And that's only going to be most of the time, until scientists figure out how to make humans obsolete. A tank is only as functional as its soft, squishy human crew. So anytime you're cruising around in your big, bad battlemobile, you can be sure that you're going to be locked down and buttoned up tighter than Fort Knox. Nearly every modern battle tank can operate inside a nuclear, chemical, or biological environment, meaning that when these things seal up, we mean it. Hopefully you like that air you've been breathing, because you're going to be breathing it over and over again for hours, potentially even up to 2 days straight. Scrubbers in the air filtration system will keep you from suffocating on your own carbon dioxide, but, well, they don't work quite as well on other things, like smells. So go ahead and take a quick whiff of your armpit right now, then go ahead and close your eyes and imagine how bad you might sink after spending an entire day buttoned up in an airtight tank. Sure, modern tanks have air conditioning, but when it comes to a very long list of priority equipment and systems to keep well maintained and repaired, the AC comes in dead last. If you happen to have the luck of serving in a warm tropical or scorching hot desert environment, then you'll very soon understand what it feels like for cookies every time you stick them in an oven. Huffing down your own funk is bad enough, but with up to a 4-man crew, you're going to have to get used to the particular flavors of your crewmates. For a good approximation of what that's like, next time you're around a sweaty friend, go ahead and stick your face in their armpit, and then take several deep huffs of air. Hold it in. Really savor the sweat stank coursing down your esophagus and saturating your lungs with their salty stink. Let the vapors linger as they work their way back up your respiratory system and come up the back of your throat and into your mouth. Yeah, that's what living in a tank is like with 3 other guys. But as you check out the digs in your new battle ride, you might notice that there seem to be several critical amenities missing. You might pay upwards of $3,000 a month for the same square footage of an apartment in New York or San Francisco, but at least those places will come with a bathroom. Inside a modern tank, the only bathroom that exists is, well, the one you invent for yourself. Gotta pee? Old Gatorade bottle will do in a pinch. Just don't confuse it with, your actual Gatorade. Gotta go number 2, though? Well, there's a reason your crew commander warns you to save the plastic bag your MRE came in. That's right, even after 100 years of tank technological improvements and innovations, the best technique for taking a deuce in a modern tank is the age-old tradition of pooping in a bag. A modern tank may be the 70-ton embodiment of God's vengeful wrath on a sinful world, but while you're stuck in it, you're still pooping in your sandwich baggie. You can forget about hopping out so you can pinch a loaf off real quick from the side of the tank. Tanks operate on the most dangerous battlefields on Earth, and that means that the life expectancy of a tank crewman outside of his actual tank is vanishingly short. While you're living in a tank, you're going to be squatting your grumps in the tank, not outside of it. For our more astute viewers, this has likely already led to the question on many of your minds. What happens after you're done laying wolf bait? Like, what happens to it? Well, modern tanks are thankfully equipped with a trash incineration device that instantly disintegrates whatever trash the crew generates in. Just kidding. That's right. Over 100 years of tank design, and still, the best solution to what happens after someone takes the Browns to the Super Bowl is to simply stow it away. That's tank speak for you're hanging on to your poop until it's safe to actually exit the vehicle. Hopefully your poop receptacle is airtight, but since you're using plastic sandwich baggies or plastic MRE bags, it most definitely will not be. At least try to tie a knot onto it and not repeat the unfortunate disaster aboard Apollo 10 when one of the astronauts' Hershey's Kisses started floating around the cabin. With all the shaking and banging a tank does as it moves around the countryside, though, odds are eventually you're going to have a loose turd rolling around. Marinating in the smells of your crew's poop, urine, and sweat, though, is only some of the perks of getting to drive around in the most powerful machines on Earth, because the other perk is occasional and extremely excruciatingly painful injuries. As we've mentioned, the actual human crew is more of an afterthought for many tank designs. And in tanks like the German Leopard 2, it's all too easy for the crew to get seriously injured, if not killed, by their own machines. One German tanker was caught in the machinery of the turret and had his femur snapped cleanly in two. Though broken arms, fingers, and even legs are not uncommon injuries for tankers. We seriously cannot overstate just how much you don't want to be in the machine. At least, though, you'll get to make big bangs driving your tank around, and every time that big main cannon fires off, you can expect the cannon to fire your sword height from the fired round. You can add that one to your laundry list of savory aromas you'll get to enjoy in your life inside a tank. Listen, there's one obvious perk to life inside a tank, though, and that's mainly the fact that if you happen to be riding inside an American Abrams or a British Challenger, there's really not much on this modern battlefield that's going to be anything more than a pesky annoyance. Small arms fire? Kick your feet up as you enjoy the tin roof-like sound of high-caliber rounds plinking off your thick armor plating. RPGs? Those are cute, but I bet they would tickle a little bit if one hit you. They certainly tickled an American Abrams that took over 52 RPGs in one day and only suffered a thrown track. IEDs? Well, unless the IED is the size of, well, a tank, then it's not going to do much, but maybe scuff the paint. You may be feeling invulnerable, but you're also going to be a pretty priority target on any battlefield. And while anything we've discussed isn't going to do much but annoy you, there's plenty of weapons out there that can seriously crap up your day. You can be sure that if you're facing a modern or even close to modern foe, then you're going to have everything from bona fide anti-tank missiles to other tanks trying to knock you out of the fight. And while your thick armor may protect you from most things sent your way, even a hit that doesn't penetrate the armor can be deadly to the crew inside. That's thanks to spalling, or when a hit is absorbed by the tank's armor. But the energy actually causes the inside of the armor to fracture and fire off shards of razor-sharp metal inside the crew compartment. You really don't want to get in the way of 3-inch shards of scrap metal traveling a few dozen feet per second, any more than you want to get your arms or legs in the way of the moving machinery inside the tank. Then there's the fact that any round that actually manages to penetrate the interior of a tank, well, it's not going to be particularly survivable for the crew. A fighter pilot can still eject if his plane is hit by a missile or gunfire, and even soldiers in a Humvee can be completely unharmed or just dazed if they roll over an IED. But if an anti-tank round hits your tank and penetrates, well, that kind of stuff is just simply not survivable. Humans are just too squishy. A high explosive round, for instance, may not be particularly effective against modern tanks thanks to modern armor. But if you're caught with your head out of the turret when it goes off, it's going to basically ruin your day by taking your head clean off. A high explosive squash head round, on the other hand, is going to very much ruin your day if you're sitting inside your tank. These rounds create a large surface explosion on the outside of the tank, which causes the metal armor on the inside to shatter and spall, showering the crew with high-speed shrapnel. The use of spaced armor has made these rounds less effective, but still a danger. If you come under fire from an armor-piercing discarding Savage round, however, you better hope your armor's up to manufacturer's specs, because if it's not, it's going to be your last day on Earth. These rounds use no explosives, and instead fire a very thin needle-like projectile which penetrates through layers of tank armor. By the time the penetrator makes it to the interior of the tank, it's been fractured so badly that it turns into a deadly high-speed shower of razor-sharp shrapnel. If you're on the business end of a depleted uranium round, such as those used by American tanks, then we hope you've got a solid last will and testament, because no known tank on Earth has survived a hit from one of those bad boys. Lastly, you've got high-explosive anti-tank rounds to concern yourself with, which like to mix things up by providing a fun party mix of high-speed kinetic penetrator death along with high explosives. If the kinetic projectile that punches through your armor doesn't kill you, then the searing hot explosion that follows it certainly will. And if you happen to be running around with your own ammunition exposed, then you can be sure that the sudden rise in temperature to several hundred degrees will cause your ammo to cook off, further adding to the explosive death fun. At least it'll be quick. With the threat of instant death, absolutely zero legroom, and the joy of marinating in the fish smells of a four-man crew, you might be wondering who exactly would want to even serve as a tanker anyway. Well, sure, they're uncomfortable, dangerous, and a priority target on any battlefield, but they're also pretty much the most badass machines mankind has ever made. And that in itself is a compelling argument for putting up with pooping inside of a bag for days on end. A modern tank is, after all, the literal embodiment of the wrath of a vengeful god on a sinful world.
Another
and
squad.
short of another
Okay.
even better
That's
tank,
fine.
or perhaps serious air support, there's not much that's going to stop your rampage across the battlefield. And definitely not things as flimsy as buildings or walls. But a thrown track definitely will, and despite how tough modern tank armor is, the truth is tank treads might as well be made of eggshells for how often they get damaged or thrown. Even just taking a turn too sharp is enough for a tank to throw a track. And in that case, you can look forward to the fun of having to lift hundreds of pounds of metal tracks with just you and your crewmates as you desperately try to fix your busted tracks so your giant murder machine can actually move. But hey, at least then you could poop outside of the tank for a change. Sick of tanks? Why not learn about why living on a submarine sucks by clicking this video here? Or perhaps you prefer... With 72 submarines in service, the United States fields the largest underwater fighting force in the world. Stealthy and absolutely deadly against surface vessels, submarines are tasked with deterring foreign aggression, nuclear deterrence, intelligence gathering, and even providing fire support for land forces with land attack missiles. But for the most of a submarine's lifespan, it will glide through the oceans of the world completely undetected. And as they say, out of sight, out of mind. What is life like under the sea for those who man these secretive weapons of war, though? Hello and welcome to another episode of the Infographic Show. Today we're taking a look at what life is like aboard a submarine. Just a quick note about a sponsor of this video, Skillshare. You're about to learn how sailors spend 90 days or more at a time out at sea. But if that was you and you had Skillshare, you could spend that time learning brand new skills or honing existing ones. Skillshare is an online learning community with over 20,000 classes in photography, video production, management, and more. All available online right now. The first 1,000 people to sign up by visiting the link in the description will receive 2 months of Skillshare absolutely free. Join Skillshare and start learning today. Now, let's get back to the video. Not every man can be a submariner, and though it is a 100% all-volunteer force, the U.S. Navy's submarine fleet has very stringent entry requirements. Individuals must be male, pass a series of academic tests, psychological evaluations, and intensive courses on the fundamentals of submarine operations. With deployments that can last for hundreds of days at a time, and disaster being only one mistake away, the Navy must be confident that it is entrusting some of the most expensive weapons in its arsenal, and the 100+ lives within them, to only the most psychologically stable and academically qualified individuals. But it isn't a life for everyone who applies. Technically, the U.S. deploys submarines for about 90 days at a time, but the realities of a dynamic geopolitical environment sometimes means that submariners will be out at sea for 100 days or more, pulling into port only long enough to stock up on food reserves before putting out to sea again. One submariner interviewed by Task and Purpose said that his longest deployment was for 328 days. That's a long time spent inside a cramped metal tube underwater. As the U.S. Navy only operates nuclear-powered submarines, each sub's endurance is based on the amount of food it can carry. The reactors will typically only be fueled once during the lifetime of a boat, and a need to keep its crew fed is the only thing that limits how long a submarine can stay out to sea for. Both air and water are regenerated internally, so even long after food runs out, a submarine will still provide fresh drinking water and breathable air. The submarine's crew is split up into 3 6-hour shifts each. Typically, a crew member will have 6 hours on duty, 6 hours of study, exercise, and private time, and 6 hours of sleeping time. This 18-hour day rotation can be disorienting for a crew who spends weeks at a time under the water, and typically crew members only know what time of day it actually is, based off of what meal they are being served. Space is at an absolute premium on any submarine, so personal space is extremely limited. Every submariner has typically about 15 square feet to themselves, and sleep in tiny bunks, affectionately or not called coffins. Inside your bunk, only a thin sheet of cloth separates you from the outside world, so privacy is nearly non-existent. And because somebody is always sleeping no matter the time of day, submariners have an unwritten rule to never slam doors, and always keep volume down to a minimum. Some submariners, however, have more crew than bunk space, which leads to the much-hated practice of hot bunking, where 2 or more submariners share one bunk. As one prepares to start their shift, the other takes his place to get his 6 hours of sleep. Submarines, it seems, are definitely not places for anybody with privacy or personal space issues. Bunks aren't the only place with limited space. There's typically only 2 showers for the entire crew of up to 130 submariners, and a maximum showering time of 3 to 5 minutes is enforced. This not only helps ensure everyone who needs one can get a shower, but it also lessens the strain on the ship's water filtration system, which turns salty seawater into fresh water. There's also typically only a single dryer and washer aboard a submarine, making clean laundry a luxury. For entertainment, there is a tiny gym with typically 1 to 2 machines and free weights, which the crew can use. Because space is at such a premium, rooms typically have double uses, and the gym may in fact be the torpedo room. The officer's wardroom, where senior officers dine, also serves as an operating theater during medical emergencies. Bathrooms are extremely limited as well, with typically only 1 bathroom per 40 men. And you better know how to use the toilet, because waste has to be held in a special tank to be ejected at the appropriate time. The toilet has to be pressurized before you flush it, but operated improperly and it will shoot its contents backwards into your face. A rec room typically offers a plasma TV or 2, and a large selection of movies to keep the crew entertained. Video game systems are common, along with a small library of games, though the Navy makes cards and board games freely available to help sailors blow off steam and build camaraderie. The most space aboard a submarine is reserved for the nuclear reactor and the propulsion system, which alone take up about 1/3 of the sub's total length. The kitchen takes up the second most amount of space and is typically extremely well stocked. The U.S. Navy, known for decades that a well-fed crew is a happy crew. Life beneath the waves for weeks or even months at a time can be extremely stressful, and so the Navy makes sure its galleys are well stocked. Sailors can enjoy fresh ingredients for the first few weeks of deployment, though after that, food is made from non-perishables. Even then though, chefs manage to whip up a variety of dishes from lasagna to lobster to prime rib, and a delicious dessert is always on hand. There is no internet aboard a submarine, and communication with the outside world is reserved for the rare instances that a sub surfaces. Because initiating communications can give away a sub's position, and stealth is the most valuable asset, submariners don't communicate much with the outside world. That means that submariners can go weeks or months without contacting family or loved ones, and must rely on the friendships they've developed on board. To make the cramped environment more tolerable for each other, submariners have additional unwritten rules, such as no talk of politics on board, although sports trash talk is acceptable if not encouraged. While all of the military branches are keen on traditions and rites of passage, none are as dedicated to their traditions or have as nuanced rites of passage as the Navy. Partly tradition and partly to help keep morale up, submariners enjoy a tradition of initiating new crew members on their first crossing of the equator, called crossing the line. Everyone who has already crossed the line is known as a shellback, and those who haven't are known as wogs, shorthand for polywogs. The polywogs must polish a set of red trash weights used to compact trash, and then wear them around their necks for a week before the crossing. Wogs are also given an M&M, which they must keep and defend as their pearl, ensuring that it stays on their person at all times. Upon crossing the equator, the shellbacks spray the wogs with water hoses and dunk them in cold water, which may or may not have been urinated in. Semen on a strange sort. Then they're escorted to the wardroom, where the fattest submariner on board has been dressed in a baby's diaper and covered in whipped cream, vinegar, mayonnaise, pretty much every condiment available. And then the wog must place their pearl inside his belly button and retrieve it back with their mouth. From that day on, the wog is no more and is welcomed as a full-blown shellback. Strange rituals aside, strong camaraderie is what sets submariners apart from other sailors in the U.S. Navy. And when you're spending weeks at a time in a pressurized cylinder straining to hold back the weight of the ocean, it's understandable that you might need to let some steam off in some pretty creative ways. Because of the high stress of their jobs, submariners are often excused somewhat from the Navy's typical strict regulations on hair and facial hair, allowing short beards and longer than usual hair for the notoriously tightly clipped U.S. Armed Forces. Once rejoining the rest of the Navy by pulling into port, however, submariners must get the trimmers out and make sure they're back in regs. Life aboard a submarine is tough, a unique mental and physical challenge that not every sailor is cut out for, yet has been argued repeatedly by defense analysts across the U.S. The U.S. Navy's silent service is the most critical element of its national security, from maintaining nuclear deterrence to ensuring the good behavior of not-so-friendly nations by threatening swift and overwhelming retaliation. Submariners are the world's ultimate, if secretive, peacekeepers. Think you have what it takes to be a U.S. submariner? How would you handle weeks underwater with no fresh air or sunlight? Let us know in the comments. Also, be sure to check out our other video called What Happens If an Airplane Enters a No-Fly Zone. Thanks for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you next time.
This video was made possible by Wix. If you are ready to create a website, head over to wix.com/go/infographics to try out one of their premium plans right now. On January 23rd, 1960, the Trieste touched down on the sandy soil at the bottom of Challenger Deep, the deepest part of the Mariana Trench and the deepest point in the world. At a depth of 35,815 feet, the Trieste withstood an incredible 1.25 metric tons per square centimeter of pressure, although the single plexiglass window had cracked on the way down, giving American John Walsh and Frenchman Jacques Descartes a good scare. Yet the Trieste was not a submarine, but rather a bathyscaphe specifically designed to withstand the tremendous pressure. In today's episode of the Infographic Show, we ask, how deep can submarines go? It's said we know more about the surface of the moon than we do about the bottom of our own oceans. And the reason why may have a lot to do with how incredibly difficult it is to visit the deepest depths. As a submarine slips beneath the waves, the weight of the water above it presses down on its hull. The deeper you go, the more water above you and the greater the pressure on your submarine. Bathysphere or bathyscaphs, such as the Trieste, are able to dive to much deeper depths than a submarine because they are spherical as opposed to the cylinder design of a submarine. A sphere is better able to resist pressure because it takes advantage of its arch-like construction, something discovered by the ancient Romans who used arches extensively in their grand architecture. As force presses down on the arched top half of a bathysphere, the pressure is distributed equally across the entire sphere. A cylinder, on the other hand, does take advantage of some of the arch-like characteristics of a bathysphere, but aren't as effective in spreading out the pressure exerted on them as a completely rounded sphere. For utility reasons, submarines also must be designed differently so they can hold crew, equipment, and weapons, while a bathysphere is typically limited to only a few square feet of space. The Trieste, for example, housed her crew in only 7 square feet of living space, making for an incredibly cramped 4.5-hour ride to the bottom of the ocean. Submarines are thus far more limited in their cruising depths than a specially built bathysphere, and each submarine has different depth ratings. Oxygen becomes toxic at higher pressures, and humans can suffer extreme physiological effects from high air pressure. As oxygen becomes pressurized, it forms large amounts of superoxide anion and peroxide, which are highly toxic to living cells. While the human body secretes multiple enzymes to protect itself from these effects, under high pressure, the production of these highly reactive species overwhelms a cell's ability to protect itself, destroying the cell. Prolonged exposure to high-pressure oxygen can lead to dizziness, convulsions, and eventually death. Nitrogen, too, becomes highly toxic to humans at high pressures, inducing nitrogen narcosis, or rapture of the deep, which produces a drunken-like state in the victim. Some divers suffering from nitrogen narcosis have died from willingly removing their scuba equipment in their confused state. To protect its crew, a submarine must therefore be able to keep the air inside at a relatively normal pressure, which then creates a massive pressure difference between the inside and outside that its hull must resist. Given operational concerns such as stealthiness and the necessity to effectively engage in combat, submarines are therefore far more limited in their diving ranges than a bathysphere. Typically, each submarine has a design depth which is calculated by engineers who take into account materials available and any new technological developments in manufacturing. From there, the ship's designers calculate how thick the hull must be. A sub's test
Come on, I need one more.
set at 2/3
Where
design
you
depth
at,
for
Mike?
U.S. submarines and 4/7 design depth for the British Royal Navy, and is the maximum depth at which a submarine is allowed to operate during peacetime. Operating depth, or never exceed depth, is the maximum depth a submarine is allowed to operate under any conditions, to include battle. Crush depth, or collapse depth, is exactly what it sounds like, the depth at which a submarine's hull is expected to crush. So how deep can a submarine actually go? In response to a revelation via their spying network that the United States could easily track all of its very noisy submarines, the Soviet Union launched the Akula-class submarine in the mid-1980s, an absolute monster of a sub 362 feet long with a beam of 45 feet wide. While the full capabilities of a military submarine are kept secret, it was known that the Akula III's test depth was 1,710 feet with a maximum operating depth of 2,000 feet. In response, the U.S. created the Seawolf class, which, while smaller than the Akula, featured significantly better performance than either its nemesis or the Los Angeles class subs that it was supposed to replace. Featuring a hull 2 inches thick made of steel 20% stronger than that used in the Los Angeles class, a Seawolf's crush depth was estimated to be between 2,400 and 3,000 feet. However, in the mid-2000s, the USS Jimmy Carter was modified to support clandestine operations, adding an extra 100-foot section of hull to support the launching and recovery of unmanned vehicles and up to 50 SEALs. The modifications also featured auxiliary maneuvering water jets for precise maneuvering when tapping undersea cables. Given that undersea cables can run to some pretty extreme depths, the true crush depth of a U.S. Seawolf submarine is likely well over 3,000 feet and will remain highly classified. Civilian submarines, however, have dived to much deeper depths. The Alvin class of submarines were made famous as the original model explored the wreckage of the Titanic in 1986. On a secret mission for the U.S. Navy to find and map the wreckage of 2 lost subs, maritime explorer Robert Ballard was granted last-minute permission to attempt to find the wreck of the doomed passenger ship. After a week of fruitless searching, the Titanic was finally discovered at a depth of 2.37 miles beneath the surface. Diving down in his Alvin submersible and accompanied by a remotely operated vehicle, Ballard took many pictures of the famous wreck, and in the years since, other missions to the ship have been successful, to include a dozen dives by American director James Cameron. Small submersibles far exceed the maximum depths of larger military submarines because they don't have to hold as many crew members and can thus take advantage of stronger spherical designs. While modern submersibles may even be capable of reaching the depths of Challenger Deep, none have tried since the famous expedition of the Trieste bathyscaphe. Yet today, surprisingly enough, it's NASA that is interested interested in very deep diving submersibles. After the discovery of liquid water on Titan, NASA has begun testing designs for a sub capable of diving in the methane-infused water. Yet unlike on Earth, this submarine will need to withstand extreme cold temperatures of around negative 290 degrees Fahrenheit and greater pressures than regular seawater. Yet lurking beneath the frigid waters of Titan, NASA thinks might be black smokers, volcanic vents like those that litter the surface of our own ocean and are havens for deep sea life. One thing that could do with a bit more life is definitely your website. And if you're looking to upgrade, we suggest using Wix. With simple to use yet fully customizable layouts, Wix gives you all the tools you need to make a great looking site that's uniquely you. And if designing isn't your strong suit, Wix ADI will build you a website on the spot just by answering a few simple questions. Click the link in the description or go to wix.com/go/infographics and check out how easy it is to make an awesome site. So, would you ever take a ride to the bottom of the ocean? How about the bottom of an alien ocean millions of miles from home? Let us know in the comments. Also, be sure to check out our other video called The Deadliest Submarine Built by the USSR. Thanks for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you next time!
Manage to live in some pretty remote places. Take the 258 folks that live on the island of Tristan da Cunha in the South Atlantic. If you want to visit them, you'll have to take a ship from Cape Town for a journey of 1,732 miles. For some peace and quiet, you might also visit Barrow, Alaska, which is only reachable by plane. The 4,200 inhabitants of this town spend much of their extremely cold winters in total darkness. Even more remote is the town of Etherkorthamit in Greenland, whose 452 population make their money fishing shrimp and hunting whales and polar bears. They are also happy to put the intrepid tourist up for the night. How would you fare in one of these far-flung destinations? That's what we'll find out today in this episode of the Infographic Show. Could you survive in Siberia? It really depends on which part of Siberia we're talking about, of course. If, for example, you were dropped off in the city of Novosibirsk, the largest city in Siberia, you'd be fine, as it's a modern city and you'd be living there with around 1.5 million people. Okay, so the winter is not exactly inviting, but survival wouldn't be an issue at all. But the Soviets chose Siberia as the location where people deemed a threat to the regime were sent to die for a good reason. Parts of it are about as remote as you can get. Siberia itself is massive, with a total land area of 5,050,000 square miles. That's about 77% of the land area in the whole of Russia. Despite that, only 27% of Russia's population lives there. The harsh climate doesn't exactly make life easy for the 36 million people that inhabit Siberia. The more remote you get, the more space people have. The almost 19,000 people that live in Koryak Okrug on the western tip of Siberia have 116,000 square miles to play with. The largest ethnic group there are the Koryaks, and we bet you never even heard of them. They live alongside other indigenous people, such as the Evans, Ilmans, and the Chukchi people. But let's say we're sending you to the most remote part of Siberia, also sometimes called the coldest year-round inhabited place on the planet. This place is called Oymyakon, and the 500 folks that live here can enjoy just an average of 3 hours of daylight per day in December. In June the sun comes out, but it's out for 21 hours a day. The lowest recorded temperature there was 89.9 degrees Fahrenheit below zero, which is a bit chilly for most people. In fact, if you go there next winter, you can expect the average temperature to be around negative 58 degrees Fahrenheit. In fact, it's bitterly cold most of the year, with temperatures at the peak of summer being 58.8 degrees Fahrenheit on average. You get the picture. But could you survive there? Well, people do. Even though pictures of them online depict them walking through a landscape that looks like a miniature town that's been sitting in your freezer for 10 years, once you're there, it's not easy getting out. The nearest town, called Yakutsk, is 576 miles away. One journalist that visited the town said he was surprised that people living there were not exactly hardened to the freezing temperatures. I expected that the locals would be accustomed to the winters, and there would be everyday life happening in the streets, he told the Telegraph newspaper, adding, but people were very wary of the cold. Yep, if it gets too bad, say below negative 50, the kids don't even go to school. He said the entire town felt abandoned, as anything that happened generally happened inside. That meant that he didn't get to meet many of the local folks. The only companions I had were the occasional street dog or one of the drunks, he said. Thank God for dogs and drunks. But he also said the locals were not exactly the warmest people in the world. They were a tough people, he said. I expected there to be human warmth there, but I didn't experience that at all. He went as far as to say that during his trip he was threatened outside twice by drunks, adding that if you end up unconscious on the floor there, it means you'll likely die. He was only there a short while too. His conclusion, it didn't feel like a happy place. Living there is hard on you in many ways. Reports suggest that just a walk down the street to the local store is exhausting, with everyday tasks like tying a shoelace outside are difficult. The weather rules over every aspect of your life, and get things wrong, and it could mean frostbite or worse. The BBC said the same thing. Its journalist said that even though the frost melts during some parts of the year, it melts slowly, and the ground is not much good for farming. Even dying is hard. It takes 2 to 3 days to dig a grave in frozen ground, wrote the BBC. So first things first, if you do get sent there to live, you'll have to get decked out in the local style clothes. Fashion is of little importance, of course, and most people there wear the best survival gear there is, not available in your local sporting goods store. The inhabitants just about all wear fur hats and fur coats. A coat will set you back about $1,500. One journalist explained what it's like not having the right clothes. This was so cold that after no more than a few minutes outside, exposed skin started to smart with pain. Damp surfaces in my nostrils froze, and toes and fingers turned uncomfortably cold very quickly, despite 3 layers of thick socks and 2 pairs of gloves. Yet, you really have to follow the locals here, so don't think about getting precious about wearing something fashioned out of a dead Arctic fox. The BBC journalist had better luck than the Telegraph journalist, who only seemed to be angry drunk men. She was invited into a house to watch a mother dressing her daughter before she went to school. Dressing was an important part of the day. In other parts of Russia, you can throw on a coat to go outdoors. Here, it takes ages to dress, but we're used to it. This is our home, the mother said. Okay, so what did the locals do to survive? Hardly anything grows. You can't be out for long, and even if you are out, it's hardly Disneyland. Well, one Western photographer wrote that a way people deal with the harsh climate is to booze the dark days away. Ruski chai, literally Russian tea, is their word for vodka, said the guy, adding that they drink a lot of tea. He wrote that plumbing is virtually impossible, so most people use outhouses to do their business in. Cars cannot even be left in a garage if it's not heated, as they won't start again. If for some reason your car fails to keep running outdoors, it's likely it won't start again. This is not a town where you want to break down. Oh, and once you get dropped off there by plane at the beginning of winter, that's it for air travel for the rest of the winter season. Those are private planes too. There's no regular airline that goes there. Most people take a long drive, but that's also perilous. The road in is called the Road of Bones. It's perilous, but it actually got that name because of all the people that died constructing the road. So let's say you have a house and you have all your furs. Now you're hungry. What are you gonna eat? Well, as hardly anything grows, people hunt for their grub. Yakutians love the cold food. The frozen raw Arctic fish, white salmon, whitefish, frozen raw horse liver, but they're considered to be a delicacy, one local man told Weather.com. In daily life, we like eating the soup with the meat. The meat is a must. It helps our health much. You're either going to have to learn how to hunt or look for somewhere to buy food. Another journalist said he managed to find a place that served him reindeer soup, and that's what he lived on for 2 days. He also said that you build up a good appetite just from getting around. After the first couple of days, I was physically wrecked just from strolling around the streets for a few hours, he said. On the menu, the dishes mostly consist of stroganina, frozen raw fish, the aforementioned reindeer meat, frozen raw horse liver, and a specialty which is of ice cubes of horse blood with macaroni. Yum, yum. You can see one video made there that shows a local market where you can buy this stuff, but it's not exactly bustling. In the film, there's one customer with her child walking around the market in negative 68.8 degrees Fahrenheit, cold. While filming the trading rows, my hands froze to wild pain. And sellers stand here all day long. How do they warm themselves, said the filmmaker. The answer is good clothing, but also the fact that these people are very, very tough. So the answer to the question this show asks is no. We don't think you could survive living here without a great deal of help. But it all depends on which part of Siberia, of course. The more remote, the less chance you'll have of survival. Or do you disagree? Let us know in the comments. Also, be sure to check out our other video, Why 2019 Will Be Horrible. Thanks for watching, and as always, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
I'll hold this spot.
Infamous mnemonic device to remember the fate of all 6 of King Henry VIII's wives goes as follows. Divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, survived. Needless to say, King Henry had a less than favorable reputation when it comes to the subject of his personal life. Though we often look back and think of him as the overweight tyrant he became in his later years, it can be easy to forget that he had once been a well-liked, good-looking, athletic celebrity in his youth. He was, at the time of the early 16th century, a popular, charismatic figure, and the most eligible prince in Europe. So how did this promising young monarch become so cruel and end up executing 2 of his wives? Henry VIII took the throne in 1509, and this was also when he married his first wife, Catherine of Aragon. If you watched our other video of the worst breakup in history, then you probably already know how this marriage ended. Though Catherine wasn't executed, her pride was damaged when she was ostracized and humiliated by her public rejection from the king. So why did he treat her that way? To understand what was going through Henry's mind, we must remember that he was a product of his time. During this period in history, it was imperative that Henry produce a son and heir to inherit the throne, and Catherine had only been able to deliver one girl, the future Queen Mary I. The rest of their children had either been miscarried or stillborn. In Tudor England, image was everything, and a failure to produce a male heir was a direct hit against Henry's fragile ego. His masculinity felt threatened, and he wanted to ensure that everyone knew it wasn't his fault. He had portraits and sketches of himself drawn to exaggerate his masculine features, made him look taller, and add in a large bulge under his outfit to emphasize the size of his, well, private area. He participated in many sports such as hunting, jousting, and tennis. He wanted to make it known that he was a strong leader and the epitome of virility. So it was easier to place the blame on Catherine than to confront the possibility that he could have any shortcomings of his own. We think the greatest influential factor for leaving his first wife, however, came from the seductive powers of one woman, Anne Boleyn. It is very possible that Anne Boleyn was aware of the king's insecurities and that she played them to her advantage. Very well, we might add. Some say she was motivated by family ambition. She appealed to his vanity while simultaneously keeping him loyal. She did this by denying his advances. When Henry would buy her expensive gifts, she refused them. She was playing hard to get in a very high-stakes game. In hindsight, though, this was an ingenious tactic for alluring the king, because it fueled his interest and caused him to be completely infatuated with her, practically to the point of worship. There are some claims that the traditional English song Greensleeves was composed by King Henry VIII for his love of Anne, mainly due to the lyrics "Cast me off discourteously," which are thought to refer to Anne's initial rejection of him. This, however, is only speculation, since there's no real definitive evidence for the origin of the tune. Nevertheless, once Anne Boleyn entered the picture, Queen Catherine had to go. Anne Boleyn promised to grant Henry the son and heir he desperately wanted, a very tempting bargaining chip, but only if he made her his wife and queen. She would not settle for less and would also not enter his bed, refusing to sleep with him until his first wife was out of the way. Henry moved mountains to divorce his first wife, motivated by his lust for Anne. When he failed to get approval from the Pope, Henry took matters into his own hands. He established his own church, the Church of England, and separated England from the Roman Catholic Church. This caused division in his country, the start of a feud between Catholic citizens and Protestants. Henry then granted himself his divorce and married Anne. Once they were married, however, Anne Boleyn's powerful hold over the king started to slip from her grasp. She had the title that she wanted, but no longer possessed her bargaining chip to play, and there was intense pressure on both Henry and Anne to produce a son, especially now that he had uprooted his entire country just to be with her. Anne did fall pregnant and give birth to a healthy baby, but it was a girl, the future Queen Elizabeth I. Henry was bitterly disappointed, and Anne would start sliding on a downward slope from there. After this, Anne's future pregnancies would end in 2 more miscarriages, which made her increasingly vulnerable. Her influence on the king waned, and she was in a very precarious situation. It's easy to imagine that she would have been feeling intensely stressed by this point, recalling what happened to her predecessor, Catherine. It can be speculated that based on the unique circumstances of how they came together, Henry may have felt a certain level of resentment against Anne for pushing him to the point of dividing his country, separating from Rome. When she couldn't keep her end of the bargain by providing him with an heir, this must have delivered another humiliating blow to Henry's image. He was also growing increasingly older, impatient, and more desperate to have a son. Additionally, Henry's interest was being redirected toward another woman named Jane Seymour. The foundation of his relationship with Anne was falling apart. Anne's downfall hit rock bottom when she was attacked with accusations of committing adultery with multiple men, including her own brother. Supporters of Anne Boleyn today would argue the possibility that these treacherous offenses were fabricated to eliminate Anne from the scene, possibly so that Henry could start fresh with his new love, Jane. After all, a lot of the evidence that was used against Anne seemed a little phony. Innocent actions such as dancing with her brother were used as testimony. At the time, though, no one would have been bold enough to jump to Anne's defense, and there were a lot of people who resented her for the shameful treatment of Catherine of Aragon. Even the fact that Anne had alibis for 12 of the occasions when she was thought to be committing adultery didn't seem to matter. Though she was never actually on trial for witchcraft, there was a myth circulating that she had bewitched the king into marrying her. There was nothing that Anne could do or say at this point to prevent her fate, as her once strong influencing power over the king was now entirely obsolete. Anne was executed in May 1536 after only 3 years of marriage. Henry ordered a skilled French swordsman to do the job so that the beheading would be quick and painless. We suppose that in a twisted way, this was a final gesture of love. This made Anne Boleyn the first English queen to be executed. So how did Henry switch from being head over heels in love with someone to then having her killed? Well, aside from the factors already discussed, there's another idea in the mix, a possible medical explanation. Many experts blame a jousting accident that Henry endured, which occurred at a tournament at Greenwich Place on the 24th of January 1536, not long prior to Anne's execution. His horse fell on top of him and he was unconscious for 2 long hours. This serious accident reportedly caused a personality change in Henry, whereby he transformed dramatically from being sporty and generous to cruel and tyrannical. According to the History Channel documentary Inside the Body of Henry VIII, this accident could well have caused undetected brain damage in Henry, turning him into the tyrant we think of today. So could brain damage have pushed Henry to execute his second wife? If we had today's medical knowledge and technology somehow magically transported back in time to examine him, perhaps then we could know for sure. Just over a week after Anne was beheaded, Henry quickly moved on and married his mistress, Jane Seymour. Who knows what Jane was thinking? Knowing what happened to the previous queen, it's easy to imagine that anyone would be frightened to be in her shoes. Luckily for her, she gave birth